International Justice Mission, and that's where the money goes towards that we raise at Rock the Chains. How much does it cost them to legally find a solution to free someone from forced labor and free someone from sex trafficking? So we talked about that last week, and that was our question this morning. And most of y'all knew it. For forced labor, it costs IJM. Second place, 9 of y'all thought $1,000, and 10 of you had it correct with $500. So that's how much it is for a legal solution to that problem. We talked about that last week as far as what they do to not just perpetuate the problem, but really to free people and then prosecute those who are enacting that form of oppression. And then to free someone from sex trafficking, which is a similar things. Some people had really, really high guesses, it's kind of an interesting thing to think about because you want it to be low as far as our ability to stop it. But then when you think about that dollar amount in someone's life, it's a really interesting thing to start thinking about how much money does it really cost someone to get them out of one of the worst forms of repression. So 11 of y'all had it right with $1,000 is how much is for a legal into that. So good job if you were here and you remembered or if you just guessed, either way. We're going to hear from Jennifer Johnson. She is going to come and share. Let's welcome her. Globally, and Jennifer is going to share about issues of childhood poverty here in the Middle Tennessee area as well as across the United States.
Okay, hey guys, I'm Jennifer. Poverty denies opportunities to people of all ages, and lost opportunities in childhood usually cannot be regained later. So if a child is born into poverty, chances are they're not going to rise out of that situation. And tackling childhood poverty is therefore critical for eradicating poverty and injustice worldwide. And nearly 15 million children in the United States, which is 21% of all children, live in families with income below the federal poverty level, which is $22,500 for a year for a family of 4. And then research shows that on average, families need an income of about twice that level to cover basic needs. So using that standard, 42% of children live in low-income families. And in Tennessee, there are 816,721 families, and that is 1,458,317 children. 47% of those children live in low-income families, and the national percentage of that is 42. And then 23% of these children live in poor families, which is when there's barely any money for the family at all. And there's several different organizations and stuff that help like kids struggling in that kind of situation. There's a National Center for Children in Poverty, which is the nation's leading public policy center dedicated to promoting the economic security, health, and well-being of America's low-income families and children. And then in Nashville, there's several different organizations and stuff. There's Safe Haven, which provides shelter and transitional services that empower Middle Tennessee homeless families with children to achieve lasting self-sufficiency. And then there's programs like Harvest Hands, where it's an educational program for the kids to learn and grow in their leadership and stuff like that. And so that's pretty much it. I mean, it's all over the world, but especially in the U.S. So, yeah.
Hey, everybody. Spring break's not for resting, Lindsay. It's for partying.
Woo, SBXI!
Who feels like you partied on spring break? Oh, okay. Those people didn't make it back yet this morning. Okay, cool. We're going to look at what is. It's two things. It's actually one of my favorite passages of Scripture this morning, and it's also a passage of Scripture that I find to be one of the most challenging. Because it takes away my excuses. And so if you've got a Bible with you, turn to John chapter 6. And I have a vision that someday this room will be filled with people, and I'll say, if you have a Bible, turn to, and there will just be like these loud sounds of like paper turning, and everybody's like, yes, and everybody gets there really quickly because they're so well in tune with the pages of their Bible that they know where everything is. I have this vision. I can see it. I can hear it. I can hear the rustling of the pages. But it actually is related because actually one of the challenging things about this passage of Scripture, like I said, it takes away my excuses. And oftentimes I will say things to God like, I can't do that. I don't have the ability to do that. I'm not good enough to do that. I don't have enough to do that. And this passage of Scripture says to me, that's not a valid excuse. And for all of us, I think as people, we sometimes have this expectation that God is just going to come down and smack us on the head and tell us what to do, and just it's going to happen out of the blue. We're not going to have to put any effort into it, but God's just going to do that to us. And I think the truth is we've got to give God something to work with. We've got to be willing to give God something to work with in our lives, in our hearts, in our habits. And if we'll do that, I think we'll find that God will do some pretty incredible stuff, which is what happens in this passage of Scripture this morning. So let's just read it. John chapter 6, verses 1 through 13. It says, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, in case you were wondering. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Like, thanks, Jesus. Thanks for asking. Thanks for the test question. I really appreciate it. That's just what I would be thinking if I were in that situation. So verse 7, Philip answered him, "It would take almost a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?" Which brings up a couple questions for me. Have you ever asked that question about your own gifts or abilities or resources? Like, God, the need is really, really great, and I only have this really small amount of stuff. Or, God, there's so much going on, and I'm just one person. I can't do it all. What I have to offer, like, it really can't make a difference, can it? Like, how far can what I bring to the table go among so many needs and hurts and wants? And I know as we've been studying justice and all the injustice and oppression that happens in the world, and hearing Jennifer talk about those statistics this morning, just right here in Nashville, all the children who are in poverty, I feel really overwhelmed by that. Like, what can I actually do? Can I actually really make a difference? Because I've only got so much, and that's kind of what's happening in this story. Andrew, one of Jesus' disciples, says, and he's got 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but, I mean, did you see the number of people who are here? There's no way that can feed all these people. And then check out what happens in verses 10 through 13. Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there, which doesn't include... When we talk about the feeding of the 5,000, usually the way that Scripture is talking about that, just because that was the cultural way to count, they're counting the men, so as 5,000 men, but that doesn't include the women and the children who are also there. And so many more people than just 5,000 people are there. They've got 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. For me, this brings up a question. Do you believe in scarcity or do you believe in abundance? Scarcity or abundance. I'll tell you the definitions. Scarcity basically means it's a shortage of supply. It could be a supply of anything. Shortage of supply of food, like it seemed like was happening in this story. Shortage of supply of water. Basically, there's just not enough resources, things, stuff, money, whatever, to go around. And abundance is the opposite of that and just means overflowing fullness, more than enough. One of the questions, or a couple different questions that we ask in our world today is, like, one, is there enough food to go around? Is there enough food produced by the earth to feed all the people on the earth? Or is there enough water? Is there enough clean water? So here's a couple pictures. Like, this would be scarcity. So these children are trying to drink from this filthy stream that people are washing their clothes in upstream, and animals are probably doing stuff in upstream from that. That's scarcity of water. Then there's abundance. This is a picture of abundance of water. How many of you have ever played in fountains like this? It's really, really fun to do that. They've got a couple different places in Nashville that have some big fountains in the summer. But that is an abundance of water. So I just want to ask you, okay, in terms of just stuff in general, the basic necessities of life, food, shelter, water, if you believe in scarcity, there's not enough to go around for everybody in the world, stand up. I don't have the right answer, by the way, so you're not going to be wrong. So if you believe in scarcity, there's not enough stuff, stand up. If you believe in abundance, there's plenty to go around, stand up. That's good. Stay standing, because here's the deal. If you believe in scarcity, if you're not sure, stay sitting. If you believe in scarcity, if you believe there's not enough stuff, not enough food, not enough water, not enough justice to go around in the world, then you have to hoard it. Like, you've got to keep it for yourself because you're not sure if you give anything away if there's going to be enough for you. So if you believe in scarcity, you have to keep things to yourself. But if you believe in abundance, which it looks like most of you do, if you believe in abundance, that there's more than enough to go around, more than enough food in the world, more than enough water, more than enough justice, more than enough freedom. If you believe in abundance, you can be generous with that because you know you're also going to be taken care of as you take care of other people. Go ahead and sit down. So then a question, and this is where this passage challenges me because I do in my heart and in my mind, I believe in abundance. I believe in abundance. But the question comes down to this. How do you live your life? Do you live your life like abundance is true? Like, do you live your life in a generous way? Can people look at the way you live your life and say, you know, he believes in abundance. She believes in abundance. She believes there's more than enough to go around. Or do you live your life like everything is scarce? Because there's a big difference in just believing something and knowing it and feeling it and actually doing it. And I think it's true that what we do is in reality what we believe. So how do you live your life? Believing in scarcity, living out scarcity, or living out abundance? And then, what did the boy in this passage live by? Scarcity or abundance? And what happened as a result? Let me just read this part again, in case you missed it. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. Here's a boy. He's brought his lunch. This is enough to feed him and maybe his family. But he's willing to give it. He's willing to give it to the crowd. This one boy with this just small amount of food is willing to give everything that he has to more than 5,000 people. But Jesus' disciples like, how far will they go among so many? Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. Jesus, I want to read that again. Like, it's not just everybody got a little crumb of food, like a little scale on the fish. I don't know why I was like, I would like to see that. Don't take a picture. But Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. So everybody, they got to eat, all of them got to eat as much as they wanted. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Here's a true-false statement. I think this statement is both true and false. God will show up if you show up. Who's heard something similar to that before? God will show up if you show up. I think that's true, but I also think it's false. The false part is, I think the truth is God is already there. Wherever there's a need in the world, God is already there, and God's just waiting for us to show up.